The mistress smirked as she spat on the trembling wife in front of everyone, confident her lover's divorce had finally humiliated the poor woman for good. But none of them knew the poor wife secretly owned the very restaurant where their parents scrubbed dishes just to survive. The staff froze, the husband looked away in guilt, and the mistress laughed louder, unaware she was mocking the woman who signed her parents' paychecks every month. But why did the wife hide her true identity all this time? Why did she let them believe she was broke and desperate? And what shocking thing did she do next that turned their arrogance into lifelong regret? Emily Carter stood under the shimmering chandeliers of the Wellington Charity Gala, her pale blue gown catching the glow of golden light. The air buzzed with wealth, laughter that cost millions, whispers wrapped in champagne bubbles. Her husband, Jonathan Hale, a man with an empire built on charm and manipulation, leaned close and whispered coldly, "Smile, Emily. Don't embarrass me tonight." His voice, smooth as glass, carried a warning that reminded her she was now just decoration, tolerated, not loved. Across the ballroom, heads turned. Olivia Grant made her grand entrance in a fiery red dress that clung like temptation. The crowd shifted, whispering her name with admiration and envy. Jonathan's eyes locked on her, and a smirk tugged at his lips, the same smirk that once belonged to Emily. He didn't hide it, he flaunted it. The mistress had become his prize, and tonight, he wanted everyone to see it. When Olivia reached their table, she leaned in with a voice dripping sugar and poison. "Jonathan, darling, this party's dull without you," she purred, her fingers brushing his sleeve. Jonathan chuckled, soaking in the attention. "Then let's make it interesting," he said. His eyes flicked toward Emily. "You could learn a thing or two about confidence from Olivia." A wave of laughter rolled across the nearby tables. Emily's heart pounded, but her face stayed calm. Years of public pretense had made her a master of silence. Then, with deliberate cruelty, Olivia accidentally tipped her glass. Scarlet wine cascaded down Emily's gown, splattering like blood across blue silk. Gasps echoed. Olivia gasped theatrically. "Oh no, I'm so sorry, Emily. I didn't see you there," she said, voice thick with mock concern. Jonathan's smirk deepened. "Don't worry about it, Olivia. Some fabrics just aren't meant for elegance." The crowd laughed. Polite, cruel laughter that cut through Emily's composure. And then, just when the laughter began to fade, Olivia stepped closer. Her perfume was heavy and sweet, the kind that suffocates. She looked Emily up and down and whispered, loud enough for others to hear, "Guess some women are just born beneath us." Before anyone could react, she spat, right on Emily's cheek. The sound was sharp, wet, final. The ballroom fell silent. A few gasped. Jonathan didn't stop her. In fact, his smirk widened. The ultimate betrayal in plain sight. Emily stood frozen, her cheek glistening under the chandelier. A single droplet of spit slid down to her jawline, mingling with the red stain on her dress. But she didn't wipe it away. She simply looked at Olivia. A long, steady gaze that stripped the mistress of her triumph inch by inch. Something cold flickered in Emily's eyes. It wasn't rage, it was control. The silence stretched too long. People began to fidget. Jonathan cleared his throat, suddenly uneasy. Olivia forced a laugh. "Oh, come on, it's just a joke." Emily finally moved. She took a white napkin from the table, wiped her cheek once, and folded the cloth neatly. "You're right," she said softly, her voice calm and frighteningly even. "Some women are born beneath others, but tides change." Olivia blinked, confused. Jonathan scoffed. "Don't make a scene, Emily. You're embarrassing yourself." Emily turned to him, her tone steady. "No, Jonathan, you're embarrassing yourself." He froze for a fraction of a second, thrown off by the quiet authority in her voice. But he recovered, shrugging her off. "Let's go, Olivia." They turned away, leaving her standing in silence. Emily inhaled deeply, her hand tightening around the soiled napkin. She walked through the ballroom, every step deliberate, the crowd parting for her like waves around a shipwreck survivor. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She simply vanished into the hallway, the sound of laughter fading behind her. Inside the restroom, she stood before the mirror. The red stains, the spit, the trembling reflection that wasn't trembling anymore. She pressed her palms to the marble counter and whispered, "You think I'm powerless? You have no idea." The air seemed to hold its breath. Beneath the humiliation, something was awakening. Not anger, but purpose. A young waitress entered quietly, startled to find her there. "Mrs. Hale, are you okay?" she asked, eyes wide. Emily turned slowly. "You don't have to call me that," she said gently. "Just Emily." The girl hesitated. "My parents work at one of Mr. Hale's restaurants. They said you're kind. They like you." Emily's expression softened. "Tell them, better days are coming," she whispered. When she walked back into the night, her dress still stained, her cheek faintly marked, the city lights shimmered like fire across the glass towers. Behind her, laughter continued, but she didn't look back. Somewhere deep inside, humiliation had transformed into design. Quiet, calculating, unstoppable. Jonathan Hale had made a spectacle of his wife, but soon the world would learn that Emily Carter was no one's victim. She was the beginning of his end. The morning light spilled weakly through the wide windows of the Hale mansion, but there was no warmth in it. Emily sat alone at the breakfast table, her untouched coffee cooling beside her phone. Every tap of the screen brought new humiliation. Headlines of the gala splashed across news sites, each one painting her as the pitiful wife of the city's most desirable man. Jonathan Hale and Olivia Grant, the power couple of the year. Wellington Gala scandal. Olivia's red dress steals the spotlight. Mrs. Hale's wardrobe disaster goes viral. Emily stared at the screen, her image frozen mid-flinch. The spilled wine, the spit, the laughter behind her. The comments beneath were worse. She should have left years ago. You can't buy class. No wonder he moved on. Her thumb hovered over the screen, trembling, before she finally placed the phone face down. The silence around her felt cavernous. Even the staff moved carefully now. Soft steps, lowered gazes, pity in their eyes. The doorbell chimed. Her cousin, Rachel Moore, breezed in uninvited, carrying 2 cups of latte and the sharp scent of gossip. I came as soon as I saw the news," she said, her voice dripping sympathy and curiosity in equal measure. She sat opposite Emily, her expression rehearsed. "Listen, maybe it's time to accept that Jonathan's moved on. Everyone's saying he'll announce the divorce soon. I know," Emily cut in softly. Her voice didn't tremble. Rachel sighed. "I'm only saying this because I care. He's powerful, Em. If you drag this out, he'll crush you. Take the settlement when he offers it. Start over quietly. It's better than being destroyed publicly." Emily looked up from her coffee, her eyes unreadable. "Better for who?" Rachel blinked. "For you, of course." "No," Emily said, standing slowly. "It would be better for him." Rachel frowned. "You're not thinking of fighting him, are you?" Emily didn't answer. She simply walked to the window, staring at the city skyline, Jonathan's towers rising like steel gods against the morning haze. "Do you know what's funny?" she murmured. "Everything he owns was built with my father's foundation. My name signed half of those early contracts." Rachel shifted uneasily. "You mean your father's company helped him get started?" Emily's eyes darkened. "More than helped. My father trusted him. When he died, Jonathan handled the legal transitions. I never looked closely. I was grieving." She turned, her expression sharpening. "But now, I will." That night, Jonathan came home with Olivia. Laughing, tipsy, their perfume of arrogance filling the air. Emily stood by the staircase, silent, as they stumbled into the living room. Olivia's laughter echoed through the marble halls, bouncing off portraits of Emily's ancestors. Jonathan saw her and didn't even pause. "Oh, look who's still awake," he said mockingly. "Don't wait up, Emily. We'll be using the guest suite tonight. You might want to get used to that. After I close my $8.4 billion deal next week, I'll be filing the divorce. Don't worry, I'll make sure you get a comfortable settlement. You've played the part long enough." Olivia giggled. "That's generous of you, baby." Jonathan smirked at Emily. "See? Even she thinks so." Emily's voice was calm, eerily so. Without you, I'm nothing. Isn't that what you believe? He grinned. Exactly. You're finally catching on. When they disappeared down the hallway, Emily stood in silence, staring at the empty glass in her hand. The sound of Olivia's laughter faded behind the closing door. Her fingers curled tightly around the rim until it cracked. Then she walked to her late father's study, a room sealed since his death. Dust motes floated in the moonlight. She sat at the oak desk, pulled out the old files, and began searching. For hours she read. Financial records, company transfers, contracts. And then she froze. Her heart began to race. There, her name, over and over. Emily Carter Hale. But the signatures weren't hers. The handwriting was close, perfectly forged, down to the looping E. Jonathan's empire had been built on stolen authorization. Every major deal, every acquisition under his name carried her falsified approval. For a long moment she simply stared, her pulse pounding. The humiliation, the spit, the laughter, all of it merged into one clear realization. His power wasn't real. It was borrowed, stolen, hers. She leaned back slowly, staring into the darkness. The air felt electric, charged with purpose. A storm gathered behind her eyes. In the corner of the desk sat a photograph, her father smiling beside a younger Jonathan, hand on his shoulder. Beneath it, her father's handwriting, "Character is the real wealth." Emily touched the frame, her voice low. "You trusted him, Dad. I won't make the same mistake." As dawn began to break, the room was filled with paper, open ledgers, and highlighted signatures. Emily sat with them spread before her, her face illuminated by the soft orange light of sunrise. Her night of discovery had turned her into someone else. Not the quiet wife, but the woman who knew exactly how to dismantle the man who had humiliated her. Upstairs, Jonathan and Olivia slept in the guest suite, oblivious to the quiet war that had just begun beneath their roof. Emily gathered the files, slid them into a leather folder, and stood. The red stains from her ruined gown still marked the chair behind her, a silent reminder of the night everything changed. She looked once more at her reflection in the glass cabinet, tired, hollow-eyed, but burning with new fire. "Let's see how powerful you are without what's mine," she whispered, and for the first time since the gala, Emily smiled. Morning came with a cold drizzle, streaking the glass walls of Jonathan's empire. Hale Global Holdings. The city moved with its usual rush, unaware that its golden couple was already at war. And Emily arrived at her father's old attorney's office, her appearance composed, elegant, deliberate. Beneath her calm exterior, her mind burned with strategy. Mr. Whitaker, the family lawyer who'd served her father for decades, stood when she entered. His gray hair and tired eyes softened with recognition. "Mrs. Hale, Emily," he corrected himself, sensing the change in her presence. "It's been years." "Too long," Emily said, placing the leather folder on his desk. "I need your discretion and the truth." He adjusted his glasses and began examining the documents she laid before him. Contract after contract, all bearing her name, her forged signature. His brows knitted tighter with every page. "Good God," he murmured. These aren't yours, are they?" "No," Emily said flatly. "They were forged by Jonathan Hale. He used my late father's company as collateral for his first expansion. Every major acquisition since has my falsified approval. Without those signatures, his entire fortune collapses." Whitaker exhaled slowly. This could destroy him, but it could also drag you down with him, Emily. Are you ready for that?" She looked up, her gaze steady. "He spat on my dignity. He built an empire on my inheritance. The least I can do is reclaim what's mine." Whitaker studied her for a long moment, then nodded gravely. "Then we'll do it properly, quietly. No emotion, just evidence." For hours they went through contracts, cross-checking signatures, tracing digital records. Each piece of proof layered upon the next like stones in a foundation. The foundation of Jonathan's undoing. Whitaker promised to prepare a sealed brief for legal authorities, should Emily decide to go public. When she left the office, the rain had stopped, replaced by a thin gray sky. She called someone she hadn't spoken to in years. Ethan Brooks, her childhood friend, now a financial analyst working in one of Jonathan's subsidiary companies. He answered on the second ring. "Emily, I wasn't expecting—" "I need your help, Ethan," she interrupted. "It's about Jonathan and about the company you work for." There was a pause, heavy and careful. Then his voice dropped. "Say when and where." They met that evening in a small cafe tucked between city blocks. Quiet, anonymous. Ethan arrived first, his expression cautious but loyal. When Emily entered, he rose. "I saw what happened at the gala," he said softly. "He humiliated you. I didn't think you'd want to see anyone." Emily sat, her tone low. "I'm not here to talk about humiliation. I'm here to end him." Ethan blinked, then nodded slowly. "What do you need?" She slid a USB drive across the table. "Inside are contracts with my forged signatures. I need internal access. Transaction records, offshore accounts, anything connected to Jonathan or Olivia Grant. There's more beneath the surface. I can feel it." Ethan frowned. "You think there's laundering?" "I know there is," Emily said. "Charitable fronts, fake sponsorships, money moved under fake accounts. I just need proof." Ethan leaned back, the weight of loyalty and risk pressing down. "If they catch me, I lose everything." She met his eyes. "So did I." That silence sealed it. He took the drive, pocketed it quietly, and nodded. "Give me 48 hours. When he left, Emily remained seated, staring through the rain-streaked window. She was no longer invisible. Every move now had meaning. Every silence, a weapon. 2 nights later, Ethan called her to meet in a parking garage. He handed her a folder thick with printouts and bank statements. "You were right," he said grimly. "It's worse than I thought. Offshore accounts tied to shell companies, donations funneled through fake charities, and Olivia's name appears on half of them." Emily flipped through the files, her jaw tightening. The mistress who spat on her was laundering Jonathan's money through foundations that exploited orphans and cancer patients. "They built an empire on greed and deceit," she murmured. Ethan nodded. "If this gets out, it'll ruin them." "It won't just get out," Emily said, closing the folder. "It'll explode." In the following days, Emily began making calls. Quiet ones, strategic ones. She reached out to the people Jonathan had destroyed on his way to the top. Ex-managers, fired assistants, silenced executives. Many were hesitant at first, afraid of Jonathan's influence. But when Emily shared her proof, one by one, they turned. The powerless began to unite. At home, Jonathan continued his charade, unaware that every boastful word was being recorded, every deal monitored. Over breakfast, he laughed about his upcoming signing. "After this $8.4 billion deal, nothing can touch me," he said proudly, feeding Olivia a strawberry. "Even if the board tried to challenge me, they'd lose." Emily smiled faintly, her face unreadable. "That's wonderful, Jonathan. I'm sure they'll all be very impressed." He didn't notice the edge in her tone, or the fact that she'd already sent every piece of his corruption to the investors he was about to meet. That night, she stood by her window, staring at the glowing skyline of Hale Global's tower. From afar, it looked indestructible, but inside it was already rotting, hollow, infected, ready to collapse. In her reflection, she saw both the woman who had been humiliated and the woman who had risen from it. They coexisted now, in pain and power, perfectly balanced. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "you'll finally see who you married." And beneath that calm, a smile flickered, not of joy, but of quiet vengeance, the kind that changes everything. The day of the signing dawned bright and merciless, sunlight glinting off the mirrored glass of Hale Global headquarters. Reporters crowded the plaza, cameras ready to capture what was meant to be Jonathan Hale's triumph, an $8.4 billion deal that would cement his empire forever. Inside, the boardroom gleamed with marble floors and gold-trimmed confidence. The air smelled of money and arrogance. Jonathan stood at the head of the long table, every inch the charming mogul. He wore his victory like armor, adjusting his cufflinks as Olivia hovered near his shoulder, radiant in another blood-red dress. "Today," he told the investors, "we make history." They applauded, oblivious to the storm that was seconds away. Down the hall, the elevator chimed softly. Emily stepped out. She wore a black tailored suit, simple, elegant, deliberate. Her heels clicked against the floor with unhurried rhythm. Security glanced her way but hesitated. She moved like someone who belonged there. When she entered the boardroom, conversation froze. Jonathan turned, his confident smile faltering. "Emily, this is a private meeting." She didn't answer. Instead, she placed a single sealed envelope in front of the lead investor, Mr. Vargas, and another before the legal advisor. The faint rustle of paper was the loudest sound in the room. Jonathan forced a laugh. "My wife still thinks she's part of the company. How sweet." Emily's voice was calm and cool. "Ex-wife soon enough. But before that, there's something you should see." Mr. Vargas opened the envelope. Inside were copies of forged contracts, side by side with her authentic signatures, timestamps, and correspondence proving Jonathan's deception. Another envelope held records of offshore accounts, false charities, and Olivia Grant's name tied to illegal transfers. The investors went silent. Pages turned. Eyes widened. Someone exhaled sharply. Emily folded her hands. Every acquisition in Jonathan Hale's portfolio was built on fraud. Forged consent from me, the legal co-owner of the Hale Carter Foundation. Proceeding with this signing means you're knowingly participating in criminal fraud. Jonathan's voice cracked. "She's lying. She's..." Whitaker, who had quietly entered moments behind her, stepped forward. "Everything you see is verified and notarized. If she files these with the state attorney's office, Hale Global freezes overnight." The investors began whispering. Phones buzzed. Olivia's face drained of color. Emily stood, pushing her chair back gently. "You stole from me, Jonathan. You spat on me. But I learned something from you. Power only belongs to those willing to take it back." Jonathan lunged toward her, fury replacing charm. "You think this will stop me?" he shouted. "You wouldn't have anything if it weren't for me." Emily's expression didn't change. "Then consider this my way of saying thank you." She turned toward the investors. "Gentlemen, ladies, I suggest you verify your assets before he drags you down with him." Jonathan's voice rose, desperate. "She's bluffing." But before anyone could respond, Olivia spoke. Her voice trembled, breaking the last thread holding the illusion together. "She's not bluffing." All heads swung toward her. Tears smudged her mascara. "I helped move the money," she said, her voice cracking. "He made me sign the paperwork. He said no one would find out." Jonathan spun on her, eyes wild. "Shut up!" But it was too late. Cameras had already begun flashing. Someone had tipped the press. Reporters stormed the corridor outside as word spread like fire. The investors backed away from Jonathan, whispering to legal teams. Within minutes, phones rang, contracts halted, and the deal crumbled. Security entered, but Emily lifted a hand. "Let him stay. He needs to hear this." She looked directly at Jonathan, her tone quiet but cutting. "You ruined yourself. I just handed you the mirror." He stared at her, face pale, sweat gathering at his collar. "You can't do this to me?" Emily took a slow breath, every humiliation she'd endured flickering behind her eyes. The laughter, the spilled wine, the spit on her cheek. "You already did it to yourself." She turned and walked out as chaos erupted behind her. Shouts, phone calls, accusations. Cameras followed her through the hallway, flashes bursting like lightning. But she didn't flinch. She'd spent enough of her life under someone else's spotlight. This time she walked into her own. By the next morning, headlines screamed of Hale Global's collapse, criminal investigations, and the mistress who turned witness. Olivia fled the city. Jonathan's assets were frozen. His empire crumbled overnight. Reporters camped outside the Hale mansion for days. On the third morning, Jonathan appeared at the gate, disheveled, shouting for Emily. "Emily, please! You win! Just help me!" Cameras snapped furiously. Upstairs, Emily watched from behind the curtain. He looked smaller now, stripped of polish, surrounded by the vultures he once fed. For a brief second, pity flickered in her chest, then disappeared. She closed the curtain quietly. Later that afternoon, she walked into her father's restored boardroom, now under her control once more. The old portrait of her father hung behind the desk. The plaque on the door had been changed. Emily Carter Enterprises. Her assistants waited as she reviewed new proposals. Investors who once ignored her now sought her favor. She spoke calmly, decisively, her authority unquestioned. The city that mocked her now admired her. When the meeting ended, she lingered by the tall mirror. The reflection staring back was no longer the humiliated wife, but a woman carved by fire, composed, commanding, untouchable. She reached out and touched the cool glass, remembering the whisper in the restroom that night. "You think I'm powerless? You have no idea." Now she smiled. They know now. Outside, the skyline glowed under the evening sun. Towers gilded in amber light, belonging to her once again. And somewhere far below, a man who once called her worthless watched the empire he'd stolen dissolve into dust.